Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Monday. Today I want to talk to you about the great reconciliation. And I'm not talking about reconciling Democrats and Republicans. That'll probably never happen in our lifetime or maybe even in the existence of the world. But that's actually trivial whenever you think about the great reconciliation that Paul talks about in Colossians chapter 1. In verse 21, Paul says, "And you, who once were alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now he has reconciled." We need to know where every human being begins in this journey of life. Paul is saying here, you Colossians, of course he could be saying you, Ernie Lewis, or you fill in the blank with your own name there. You once were alienated. And we know what an alien is, right? It's someone unfamiliar to us, unknown. Could be even considered foreign, where they are. But he says, you are alienated from God, which means cut off, separated completely. Now, from whom here is understood, he's talking about God, because we begin life with a sinful nature and we are alienated from a holy God. First of all, we are objectively banished because God, in his justice and in his holiness, cannot look upon sin. But we're also subjectively estranged from God by our own wills. Romans chapter 5 and verse 10 says, while we were enemies, that was our own doing. That was our own thinking. You know, we began with a certain kinship with this evil world all around us. James chapter 4 says, know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God, and whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God? Paul also says you were alienated and enemies in your mind. It reminds me of the sister letter to Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 1, he says, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins. Chapter 4 and verse 18 says, your understanding was darkened because of your ignorance and the subsequent hardness of your heart. And he says this brought about your wicked works. This is why God could not accept man. That's why we are so alienated here. This is where God found us. And then the verse says, yet now, I love those phrases, don't you? It's where this word becomes a conjunction. Yet now, it's a lot like those phrases in the Bible. However, or Ephesians chapter 2 where he says, but God, and we see that everything changes suddenly. Yet now he has reconciled you to God. We are reunited. We are brought back together. All those problems and difficulties and separation has been settled. Don't we love reconciliation? Maybe it's in a family where there's been some sort of tiff for a while and they get back together. Or maybe in a marriage where they've hit a rocky patch and yet to be reconciled is such a wonderful thing. Two old friends who have had a spat and for a while are separated, but now they are reconciled. That is a wonderful picture. But this verse is so much greater. Because here we're talking about the great reconciliation where man, in his sinful state, was found by a loving and merciful God. And although he was alienated, now he has been reconciled to God through Jesus Christ. Oh, and stick around because we're going to talk about more of it tomorrow.